This is a City AM Studios production.
Hello and welcome back to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta with me, Martin Kimber.
And me, Matt Kenyon. Coming up on the podcast today, Sir Keir Starmer has quit as Prime Minister and Andy Burnham looks almost certain to replace him.
And if the former Manchester Mayor is set to take the keys to Downing Street, what will markets, investors and business make of the new regime?
Plus, with the most football-obsessed PM in recent memory about to be replaced with another footy fanatic, what could a new government mean for British sports?
Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party. I have spoken to His Majesty the King this morning to inform him of my decision.
So it has happened. Keir Starmer will be stepping down as PM, and it looks like it could be just a few weeks before Andy Burnham is installed in number 10. Joining us to make sense of all of this is our editor-in-chief, Christian May. Welcome back, Christian.
Thank you. I'm beginning to get the sense that you only wheel me out on particularly punchy news days. There's a threshold, isn't there?
Well, luckily, quite a few days in the year cross that threshold now. We're in pretty exciting times.
We like to keep our powder dry for the big days.
All right.
So, obviously, Andy Burnham looks like he's going to be the man of the hour. But before we get onto him, let's talk about yesterday's man, Keir Starmer. Of the 58 prime ministers that we've now had since we've had prime ministers, where do you think history will rank Sir Keir Starmer?
Okay, I'll go through them all one by one. No, look, I just earlier on today I went and reread the first speech Starmer gave on the steps of Downing Street the day after the 2024 election, very nearly 2 years ago, a little under 2 years ago. And I have to say it was a very good speech. It's very well written. And in that he says that his will be a government devoted to the service of the public, etc. Well, that's very good. They all say that. And then he said specifically that this will be a government that treads more lightly on people's lives, that ends the carousel of chaos, that returns stability and decency and grown-up politics to the nation. And, of course, he has failed to deliver that and is a victim of that failure now because just under 2 years into office, he's been slung out. Now, there is a school of thought that says that Starmer's defenestration is just the latest example or proof point that Britain is effectively ungovernable, that our politics is too divided, that our problems are too deep. I do not subscribe to that view. I think to do so would be to absolve politicians and political parties of their responsibility. What's happened here is Starmer has been thrown out because his own inadequacies have caught up with him. We have talked at CCM for a very long time, almost as long as Starmer has been Prime Minister, about our grave concerns over the lack of a plan, the problems with their economic policy, their priorities, the contradictions, if you like, at the heart of the Labour Parliamentary Party that meant they can't do any of the necessary economic reforms that this country requires. He's not up to it. He has been found to have been not up to it, and his party, whilst Labour MPs that wanted to get rid of him might take a different analysis to the reasons why I was disappointed with him as Prime Minister, they have decided that he was not up to the job. He failed. And that is why he is gone. And I do think that our problems are not insurmountable, and that a good leader who is better at politics than Keir Starmer, but is able to sense the mood of the nation for all its divisions and different political flavours, should be able to have done better than Starmer has managed to do. And because he's done so badly, he is out.
He's burnt a lot of political capital very early with your winter fuel payments and other kind of scandal-type stories like your Lord Alley's glasses and sort of thing right quite early in his leadership. But for Burnham, the arithmetic both fiscally and politically won't change. The economy isn't motoring, and the Parliamentary Labour Party is in no mood for cuts, tax cuts, welfare cuts, defence spending, all that stuff. Can he somehow work his northern magic to change that arithmetic in any way?
I'd be very surprised if he manages to achieve that. I wish him well. We wish our governments and prime ministers well for all of our sakes. He will discover that being prime minister, particularly at a time like this, is very, very different to being a regional mayor, where you just get to announce things and sign cheques and open things. He will try to present the sort of a new dawn has broken, has it not, moment. And he will discover that it's not a new dawn, it's Groundhog Day, that the country still faces a terrible rate of economic growth, that there is still a fairly punishing cost of living crisis, that inflation is going to get higher before it gets lower, that unemployment is rising and will rise again before it starts to come down. The problems are very real. The public borrowing figures are appalling. And that should be grounds for pause for thought for somebody who, if he has any policies at the moment, seem to involve nationalising large swathes of British industry and subsidising what he doesn't nationalise. So he's going to come into office as if he's got this growing economy and all these levers to pull, and if only we just sort of shake things up a bit and do things differently, we'll achieve different results. But he will face, as you said, Martin, the same parliamentary arithmetic. Look what happened the last time Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves tried to shave £5 billion off a £300 billion welfare bill, annual welfare bill. The Labour MPs said no. That's not what we're here for. Now, there are some encouraging signs. Wes Streeting gave a speech last week, which I thought was very interesting. I thought it was genuinely very intellectually coherent and quite stimulating in a number of regards from City AM's perspective. I didn't agree with all of it, but coming from the mouth of a Labour MP and potentially a future Labour Chancellor, I thought it was very encouraging. But how he squares that sort of Blairite Chancellor in number 11, if that's what he does, with the fact that some of the most loony left MPs in Labour are cheering his arrival from the north down into the capital, I don't know. He will face great political difficulties and he will continue to face some very challenging economic conditions.
On the topic of Wes Streeting, he's folded in behind Burnham's campaign, and that makes it look overwhelmingly likely that we're looking at a coronation, not a contest. There's a school of thought that actually avoiding a contest is quite a good thing. We get quite a lot of stability and we know what's going to happen early on. There's also a school of thought which is that there's going to be very little scrutiny on someone who's been an MP for about 24 hours. What do you make of Burnham potentially coming in with no contest at all?
I can understand the attraction from Labour's perspective, not least Burnham's supporters' perspective, to have what he's already referred to today as an orderly transfer of power, a very polite coup language. This is effectively a left-wing coup, by the way. That's what's happened here. And I can understand the rationale for trying to get it all sewn up and done away with quite nicely in time for the summer holiday, so that he can have a great bounce post-summer holiday and into the Labour Party conference. But he will still face these extraordinary challenges. And we hear from the likes of Jim O'Neill, former Goldman Sachs top dog, who's been involved in policy and politics for a while now. He's, we understand, been advising Andy Burnham. And he said, I heard on the radio this morning, he needs to be realistic. He needs to, if he wants to borrow more and spend more to invest more, that's only doable if you take the axe to welfare, if you end the triple lock, if you take some of these decisions. And, as he put it, if you're leading, if you prepare to lead and to say to people, this is why we have to do this, come with me, which is not something Starmer was ever able to manage. But I hope Andy Burnham has more success in that direction, but I'd be very surprised.
Chris, you may. Unless you've been nationalised by the next time you come back into the studio.
Or subsidised.
Hopefully the latter. We look forward to seeing you again, but for now, that's all we have time for. Coming up after the break, what is the square mile going to make of an Andy Burnham premiership? City editor Simon Hunt joins us next. Don't go away.
This episode is brought to you by Okta. AI agents are everywhere now, quietly making decisions across organisations. That's great until you stop and think, who's in charge?
If you don't know who an agent is, what it's connected to, or what it's allowed to do, you can't really trust it to act in your interests. That's the bit Okta focuses on. They secure the identity of AI agents, so there's one clear layer of control across the whole system.
Which means every agent has a clear identity, permissions, and a line of accountability, even as things scale.
Risk becomes something you manage, not guess at. Secure every agent, secure any agent. Okta secures AI.
Welcome back. Now, it feels slightly insane to be discussing this when Keir Starmer's resignation isn't even 24 hours old, but many in the city are already placing bets on Prime Minister Burnham's pick for Chancellor of the Exchequer. To help us figure out who would spook the markets the least, we have our very own Chancellor and city editor, Simon Hunt. Welcome back.
Hello, I'm here. I'm your man of fiscal credibility.
Our diva in number 11.
So, Simon, names ranging from Ed Miliband all the way to Wes Streeting have been bandied around. Where do you think the markets are kind of most comfortable?
So I think we saw what looks to have been some kind of deal struck between Burnham and Wes Streeting, which means that Streeting is now not going to challenge Burnham for the leadership of the Labour Party. That is significant in two respects. One, because it seems like that deal would mean that Streeting is going to be Chancellor, because why else would he strike the deal? He wouldn't do that to be back as Health Secretary, I don't think. And two, because the market's preference would be for a coronation. What bond markets and markets in general do not want is a protracted period of uncertainty of several months when there is sort of endless internal Labour squabbles about who becomes the next leader, partly because of that uncertainty and partly because if there were no coronation and there were a leadership contest, then the vote on who would become the next leader would go to the Labour membership, and the Labour membership will vote for the candidate that is the most fiscally profligate, that would promise all sorts of spending commitments that the government can't really afford. So if we can swerve all of that, the bond markets would be happy with a Burnham Streeting coronation, I think.
Obviously, Andy Burnham did say not that long ago, about 6 months ago, that Britain shouldn't necessarily be in hock to the bond markets. And that is a line which definitely haunted him through the sort of late 2025 soft attempt at a coup against Starmer. Do you think he needs someone like Wes Streeting to soften his image in the City of London?
Yeah, I think I spoke to one analyst yesterday who said, Burnham, frankly, has said a lot of things, a lot of contradictory things over the past few months. And so when it comes to which Burnham to believe, it's hard to tell. But the most likely one will be the pragmatic one, because broadly speaking, people say a lot of things when they're campaigning to be leader, and then they say the slightly more sensible things once they become leader. And
that was the big lesson of Keir Starmer's leadership.
Indeed. And so I think the markets are leaning towards Burnham being sensible because he doesn't want to suffer the similar fate of Starmer.
All his trust.
Yes, but and Liz Truss was pretty swift, as we can all remember. But I think it's not just about who Burnham surrounds himself with in cabinet, including people like Streeting, Ed Miliband, etc., but also who his advisors are. I think the City are paying quite close attention to that, and so far they like what they see. We've got Jim O'Neill, the former chair of Goldman Sachs, is involved, and O'Neill has, on the one hand, said that the government needs to spend more on investment, but he's also said they need to pare back welfare spending, which I think the market likes the sound of, and also people like Andy Haldane, again a quite well-respected voice in the City, the former OBR chief as well, Richard Hughes, apparently advising him as well. So there is if you judge Burnham fiscally purely on the caliber of the people he's surrounding himself with, that's the market seem relatively calm at the moment.
But that poses the obvious question. There's an obvious ocean between those on the soft left and the left of the Labour Party, those MPs who've been cheering the end of Starmer and kind of Andy Burnham sailing in, and what it kind of looks like he's actually going to do, which looks more and more like New Labour than Starmer and Reeves.
It seems like that, yeah. But I think his job is a bit more secure, whatever he decides to do, because it's too late to have a third leader, before the next general election.
Yeah, because that means annihilation. That's what the Tories did, and you just can't do that.
Indeed, the most powerful person in the previous government was Jeremy Hunt, no relation, I hasten to add.
Although watching you guys meet the other day was fun.
Yeah, well, indeed. But he was the safest because Liz Truss had to bring him in in a last-ditch attempt to rescue her premiership, which didn't work. So by the time Sunak came along, he knew he couldn't afford to replace him because it could disrupt bond markets yet again. And I think it'll be a similar thing for whoever Burnham puts in number 11, that this has to be a period of stability now between now and the next general election. Otherwise, it's curtains for Labour.
There is also something to be said about the enduring power of vibes when it comes to Westminster politics. And I think there probably are some parallels between when Boris Johnson replaced the slightly stilted, robotic Theresa May, put out a platform which was quite vague, not necessarily to the right of her, but just seemed to embody the vibes of someone who fit with the membership.
Someone you want to have a pint with. with.
Yeah, so someone who feels socially convincing, but also someone who feels like they speak for the heart of the party. And I think if he can straddle a more fiscally credible agenda with keeping his MPs sweet, it could be, in a best case scenario, he can keep them on side. One more thing just about personnel I would like to ask you about is the city minister. So through various sort of resignations and promotions, we're now onto Rachel Blake as the minister for the Square Mile. She's the fourth. Surely she has to be kept in place to avoid a fifth. It feels extraordinary.
You would hope so, because we can't have a constant sort of merry-go-round of people occupying that post. We've seen the effect that that's had on housing ministers, where there seems to be one every 6 months.
Like 11 in 10 years, something crazy like that.
And
Prisons ministers was like that as well.
And look at the state of our housing and house building as a result. It's not good. So I think the pragmatic decision there would be to keep that person in post. And in terms of what we can expect from in terms of fiscal policy from a Burnham premiership, we can look back to the government's 2007 spending plans, which were co-authored by Burnham back when he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury in the last Labour government. And at that time, he spoke about wishing to keep debt low as a share of GDP. He even projected a fiscal surplus within 3 years of the publication of that document. I think that's pretty remote that would happen now, but that's a reassuring sign if you're a bond trader.
For continuity purposes, we will keep you in post, Simon, until
Very good,
next
that's
time we
reassuring.
see you to calm the markets. But thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And finally, Keir Starmer in his time has been accused of a slightly robotic, inauthentic presentation. But one thing that very much has been authentic about the outgoing Prime Minister is his genuine love of football. And it's not that common a trait for modern Prime Ministers. Remember, David Cameron once forgot which team he supports. So with the die-hard Everton fan Andy Burnham now in the frame, what should we expect from Labour's sports policy? Well, our Deputy Sports Editor, Matt Hardy, joins us now to talk about exactly this. Matt, welcome back.
Hello, boys. How are we doing?
Well, very well, thank
Excited
you.
to talk about my favourite subject again.
Yeah,
Andy
it's-
Burnham. may I
Precisely.
just interlude something that on Keir's departure, which no one's really talking about, is that these nominations open just before and close just after the World Cup final. I do wonder whether he's just planning a little jaunt to New York to watch the final.
I had been planning to ask you about this because, so if nominations close on the 16th,
For
that is
for nominations for the new leadership.
Yeah.
we
for the
should-
new Labour leader, and it's likely that could very much just be Andy Burnham. He becomes PM immediately at that point. The World Cup final's on the 19th, so a few days later. Very possible that he gets the ultimate honeymoon boost, frankly, that almost any PM's ever had, which is become Prime Minister and then England win the World Cup 3 days later.
Amazing, right? What a way to go out. He can claim and also Arsenal, his beloved Arsenal, won the league this year. The football mad Prime Minister. He's had a good running.
But great for Starmer because he can say, "Oh, I set them up in this way," and then great for Burnham. He gets the glow.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those classic sports boosts things. Boris boost in the Olympics. But look, this is really interesting. Burnham kind of has had history with DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, before. And there's this amazing thing everyone's talking about at the moment called the Crown Jewels of Sport, which is a list of events that must be accessible free to air. So they must be on the BBC or available online for free,
Or
YouTube.
like the Ashes.
No, not free to air. But things like
Edit that out.
things
Edit
like
that
parts
out.
of the
Keep
World
it in.
Cup, parts of the Six Nations highlights. Anyway, and certain things, Grand National, things that need to be kind of visible for everyone. FA Cup finals, another one, and these are there to make sure that everyone has access to sport, and they say it's good for the nation. Now it looks like Burnham's going to be on a nationalising agenda.
Nationalising.
A nationalising
What does
agenda.
that mean for like sports rights holding
Well,
companies?
this is it, right? He could add to this list. He could. No one's had the gumption to edit this list for a long time. He could be the guy that does that. The current DCMS secretary is Lisa Nandy. His constituency neighbour now, I believe, she's up in Wigan.
And she might be in line for a bit of a promotion out of DCMS.
Yeah, she could be, and they could replace them with a mini Nandy. But the interesting thing here is that this is the future of sport now. Is Burnham, a massive sports fan, going to change what has been kind of the status quo for so long?
Because I suppose the public affairs folks at Sky Sports would claim that, that broadcaster has ploughed millions and millions and millions of pounds into grassroots sport. And without all these exorbitantly expensive Sky subscriptions, how are these kids ever going to learn tennis?
Yes, there is that. And obviously, your love for Sky and Sky Sports continues on this podcast. What I would say is, actually, I think the cut here is Netflix, Amazon Prime. It's the streamers. Netflix have paid an awful lot of money to have Gary Lineker's podcast on, but are they going to touch sports rights? I think in America, they might show a bit of Formula One next year.
There were rumours that Apple TV were trying to make a swoop for the Premier League rights at some point last year.
Yes, and they've now got Formula One in the States. Things are moving away from traditional broadcasters, and I don't just mean BBC, ITV, Channel 4. I mean the likes of Sky and TNT Sports and Warner Brothers as well. So this is kind of a new era.
Another thing to talk to you about, and this is a bit of a schism between Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan. If there is an Olympics in the UK, the next one would be held in the north of England, according to the new pitch that's being put out. Sadiq Khan doesn't like the sound of that. He thinks it's a bit of a missed opportunity not to include London in that. But it does seem like the Manchester lobbying force might be a bit more powerful if Andy Burnham does become PM. What do you think could happen there?
Well, I think that's exactly what we're going to see. Look, I think people need to realise that the future of Olympics, the way we see them, is kind of coming to an end. These one city Olympics look like they're kind of on their way out. They're so expensive. I think Germany a couple of years ago tried to go for a bid for the entire Rhine region. Spread it out, spread the love, spread the cost. I also believe that I think Richard Parker, the mayor of the West Mids, has kind of said that he'd like a bit of action as well in on this. So it actually could become quite difficult.
Get the Rico Arena involved.
Yeah,
there's quite a lot of infrastructure up there.
Yeah, and then there's an athletics arena there that already holds 40,000 people if it wants to. This is a difficult problem going forward. It's not the most complex problem if you have to rank it with cost of living, pensions and everything else. But the amount of money sport makes, the amount of money our broadcasting infrastructure is worth to the country, and the fact that our quality of broadcast is so good that it always makes Britain an attractive place to broadcast its events, then this stuff does matter in kind of some sort of value added to the economy.
Just finally, Matt, England are going to play a game of football. I will actually be watching it because unfortunately it's happening on the day that I'm celebrating my birthday, and I'm going to have that on the television while everybody's there.
You will have to, yeah.
I'm chuffed. What's the result going to be?
Well, this shows how much Martin knows, because there might be a game on Saturday. They play a game tonight as well against Ghana in Boston, and then they play in New York at the weekend. Look, I think England looks so good. There was 20 minutes of the way they played last week where I don't think I was alive when they last played that well, according to people much older than me. But yes, look, England should be walking this group now. It's exciting for us. It looks like we're on course for so much fun. I should say there are two interesting things here. The way Iran have got some points and the way America are playing really well. There's a chance, a small one, but there's a chance that the US may play Iran in the knockouts. We're a little bit far out, and if that doesn't happen, there is honestly, and I'm not joking, there is a chance England would have to lose a game, but there is a chance that the US play England on July the 4th, Independence Day,
brilliant.
In Philadelphia. There is a chance there's a chance the Tea Party happens all over again.
That is glorious.
Well, our own Gary Lineker, thank you very much for coming in.
Not sure about that.
Matt Hardy.
We'll have you back very soon.
Cheers, boys.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for listening to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta.
Don't forget to subscribe to City AM's free daily and weekly newsletters, and of course, don't forget to download our free app.
It still has those puzzles. Keep playing them. They're really fun. We'll be back in your podcast feeds tomorrow at 6 a.m, but for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.